It's a nine-chord banger. Dr. Rawls dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. Rawls dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game, ayy, he got it mastered. It's encore. It's a nine-chord banger. Dr. Ross.
Peace to the community. We are back and we're doing a little something a little different this time around. As I told you last time I spoke with you, community, is that we finished, episode number 25 for season number 1. We put 25 eps down, laid them down. We had some great guests. Informative, folks who are passionate about the things that they're doing out in the world. We got a chance to hear from a variety of people who are doing some special things, some things that we can sometimes overlook. But people putting in work, and I was so honored to have them on the show, and hearing about their stories. So in between time, I was thinking, I was like, all right, we're gonna take a break. I felt that I needed a break. It was like kind of crazy going back to back like that. But I was like, I need a little break. But at the same time, for a break from the podcast, to give an episode in between episode break, I also don't want it to say, how can I possibly put something in between to keep everybody fed, because I see this as food, and its content is food. So I was like, how can I keep folks fed in between episodes 1 and 2? So with that said, cooked up, an idea of like, we should do this whole joint on brothers and sisters discussing, or sisters and brothers discussing, and discussing what? Like discussing all types of media, whether it's documentaries, whether it's films, books, short stories, poems, music, and how it impacts us in the Black community, from our own personal perspective. So I was like, this would be a great opportunity, to have this engaging, really not a podcast, but a show of us all getting together. So that's what you have here. We have the first installment of Brothers and Sisters, or Sisters and Brothers discussing. So with that said, before we get into, what we're going to be working on, I got to get that, Monet. Monet, just, you just don't make me think of something like that round of applause. I need to get some like round of applause. I gotta pick up my game in terms of the production. Yeah, I got to get that. So before we get started, with the project that we're gonna, work on this week, the first thing I wanted to do is just to hear from the brothers and sisters, man. We got some special folks with us tonight. Some folks I love, who I consider brothers and sisters. So what I wanted to do is just go around and, hear from everybody, see how you're doing. If you can just introduce yourselves and tell us how you're feeling. So let's start with you, Sherod.
All right. So Sherod is my name, from Long Branch native, born and raised. Just really excited to be here on a panel with my actual sister and my 2 brothers. So this is gonna be, I'm excited about this, and I feel good. I'm ready.
That's what's up. It's good to see you here. Looking beautiful as always. Next, let's go with the sister. Show some love to Monet. What's up, Monet?
Hey. So my name is Monet. Like Sherod said, born and raised in Long Branch on Liberty Street. I'm out in California now, in San Diego, and I'm happy to be here too. I miss you guys, so this is an extra special treat to get to sit down and chop it up with you. So,
no doubt.
Looking forward to the dialogue.
Looking forward to having you, Monet. Brilliant. And like someone who I got to get on the show, and I ain't even gonna go there, but I've been trying to get Mr. Elford on the show. I've been trying to get Sherod on the show. They've been ducking me.
Look at that.
I tried, like, just so everybody can know, because no cap. Like these my people, and I want y'all to know I ain't big timing them. I'm not keeping them off the show, so I'm putting it on the air. So y'all see Mr. Gilbert,
Pressure.
real talk. Y'all see Sherod, put some pressure on them. Put some pressure on them, like, yo, when y'all gonna get on that show? But we got y'all this way. But really, Monet, I definitely want to get you on. We definitely gonna work on that in season 2 to get you on as a guest. So
yeah, I'm down.
Big shout out to you for and I appreciate you joining in tonight. Finally, my brother, how you feeling?
Peace to everybody. Peace to all human families on the planet Earth. Peace to all the people who are, teaching civilization and educating and spreading, knowledge of self. I am Mr. Gilbert. I'm an educator, lifelong educator, and I'm glad to be here with my brother, with my sisters, and I couldn't think of a better platform to come here and to share the kind of content, discuss the kind of content that we're about to engage in.
Wow. Very well done. Very well done. So, we sounded like pros up in here. You know what I'm saying? But real talk, this is like laid back. Those of you who are tuning in, please, feel free to drop some comments. If you drop some comments, some questions, based on the things that we discussed tonight, we definitely will be as interactive as possible. The way I want this to go, this needs to be a conversation, right? So the first book or medium that I thought that we should look into was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So this is a book that's like crazy dear to me. I talked about it a little bit last week when I was introducing the project, but recently HBO dropped a short, it's not really a documentary, but it's like a collection of short verses or pieces of the prose from Ta-Nehisi Coates, which are read by famous actors and actresses. And it's like so powerful. I almost forgot how beautiful the book was. But at the same time, it's a beautiful book, but it's speaking about like some harshness, of the Black experience, in this country, going through the history of the Black experience, to now current, and going through it with this whole premise of the Black body, and like the Black body being, I won't even say endangered in terms of a species, because we know endangered species are protected. But the Black body just constantly being at risk. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to bring in, this text, especially now with the documentary out and about on, I think you can catch it on HBO. So if you haven't checked out the documentary, or if you haven't picked up the book, please check those things out, because when we hit you off with installment 2, episodes 2 and 3 of this show, you could be more active in the discussion and kind of have some background, of where we're coming from with the reading and with the discussion. So, matter of fact, Monet, won't you show that book again, so you could, if you don't mind, so folks can see what the cover looks like.
I still got the discount sticker on it.
It's all good. So, Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Pick it up. That's what we're getting into tonight. And we're going to start. The way the brother wrote the book is pretty much, it's broken into 3 parts. All right. And the first part is really going into him growing up in Baltimore, in the city of in the inner city, in a struggle, in a place where it was constant battling, to protect and preserve your body. And he goes into that battling in terms of protecting and preserving it amongst his peers, within the school system, having to do it. And then, even in the society, in terms of in the community with policing. And then the second part of the book he ventures off to Howard University, and he talks about his experiences at Howard University, the Mecca, and he goes into, like, I'm talking about beautiful prose, and meeting young ladies, and doing the partying thing and gaining knowledge of self. It's like, those of us who, if you've ever, been to Howard University, like, you can close your eyes and visualize, like, yo, that's dope. And then, from there, he goes and he speaks about being a father, and, being a father of a Black boy, in the pressures of that, and how it actually rattles the brain, and it rattles his mind and causes anxiety. And that's where we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up with, it's a letter that, and that's one thing I love, the way he wrote the book as well. It's kind of like an open letter to his son. And it's a letter that he wrote to his son, Samari. And that's how we're going to start off our discussion, with pieces and parts of this letter. So with that said, let's open up. The first question, that, before we even get into the questions and the prompts, I want to read a short excerpt, right, from the letter to his son. I write you in your 15th year. I am writing you because this was the year you saw Eric Garner choked to death for selling cigarettes, because you know now that Renisha McBride was shot for seeking help, that John Crawford was shot down for browsing in a department store, and you have seen men in uniform driven by and murdered Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old child whom they were oath-bound to protect. And you have seen men in the same uniforms pummel Marlene Pinnock, someone's grandmother, on the side of a road. And you know now, if you did not know before, that the police departments of your country have been endowed with the authority to destroy your body. It does not matter if the destruction is the result of an unfortunate overaction. It does not matter if it originates in a misunderstanding. It does not matter if the destruction springs from a foolish policy. Sell cigarettes without the proper authority, and your body can be destroyed. Resent the people trying to entrap your body, and it can be destroyed. Turn into a dark stairwell, and your body can be destroyed. The destroyers will rarely be held accountable. Mostly, they will receive pensions, and destruction is merely a superlative of a dominion whose prerogatives include friskings, detainings, beatings, and humiliations. All of this is common to Black people, and all of this is old for Black people. No one is held responsible. So that is like, if you watch the documentary, that's the first piece that's read. Okay. And I remember first reading, and I was like blown away, man. I was blown away by reading it. But what I wanted to open up with the panel is a discussion on, our Black bodies and your Black bodies, and when did you become aware, of your Black body and how it can sometimes be perceived, whether that's socially, whether that's professionally, whether that's, you're out shopping, whether that's, you're at work. When did you become aware of that? And what is that awareness like? So I'm just going to open up on that note to hear some of you folks and hear what y'all think.
Well, I'll start. We've discussed this before, but I'd say, and unfortunately, when we're tackling a question like this, it's always connected to something negative, unfortunately. So I think the first time that I really understood my position here in America, how my Blackness may have been a threat or may have been something that was looked upon as I can take advantage of, was when I was 14 years old. And I was coming home from school. I was in 8th grade. This was about 1990. And you may have been with me, Dr. Rawls. It was several of us. And I know it was very close to the end of the school year because it was early. It was early in the day. And I think we had just taken finals, 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And so we were on our way home and we were cutting through the trestle. Anyone familiar with, Liberty Street, Union Ave, they remember the trestle.
True.
Right now, to put it in context, it's the building pretty much where I work, the new Gregory School. Yes. So I was cutting through there. So just imagine, no Gregory School, just pretty much wilderness around that part. So we're cutting through there, and then slowly but surely, there were like 3 or 4 cops who rolled up on us, and they chose me out of all of us. And I still remember vividly to this day, they asked me if I was a certain person who I think used to live in Grant Court. I grew up in Grant Court, 74 Grant Court, and that's where I was on my way home to. And they asked me if I was a person who lived in the complex. So I'm not going to reveal that brother's name, but anyway, they thought that I was him, and they asked if they could search me, if they could search my book bag. First they asked if I had ID on me, and I didn't have any identification on me. I was 13 years old, just being a teenager, a young Black teenager. And they asked if they could search my book bag. And so because I didn't know anything about the law, I didn't know anything about my rights, I willingly said, yeah, go ahead, search my book bag. Mm-hmm. So they did. And I even remember making like a little joke saying, what are you checking my homework? But in all of that, to connect to the book, that was done out of fear.
True.
Like that joke was out of fear. And it wasn't until I got home and I told my mom what happened. Let me just finish up. So they searched, obviously, and they didn't find anything. And then they just let us go. And I remember going home, I told my mother what happened. And she actually called the Long Branch Police Department. And the response that she received was, well, they believed that this particular person that they were allegedly looking for was selling drugs in that area. And they thought that I was him. So I'm like, well, why didn't you search any of the others? Why did you select me? Now, mind you, at the time, I was probably the tallest. At the time, I was probably maybe like.
There wasn't no probably about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that you were tall.
Listen.
But still, they selected me and they searched me and searched my book bag. And I gave them authority, but they knew better. They had the authority. They had the dominion over my body at that point in time. And the fact that I was 13 years old was never taken into account. So when I got home and I told my mother, and I had time to process everything that happened, I became angry. I became angry because I felt helpless. I was upset at myself because I didn't know the law, and I felt like I should have known better. But these are the things that I wasn't prepared for. But slowly but surely, I was learning that lesson in real time. Mm-hmm. So that was my first experience with, having this encounter with police. And that wasn't the last time. And then just seeing others that, grew up around me, having these different situations and encounters and interactions with police officers. So it's a very real thing. And then the last thing I will share, to put this in further context, because at that time, 1990, anyone who knows me, I'm big on hip hop. So around that time, LL Cool J had a song out called illegal search.
Mm.
And I also thought about that. I'm like, you know, it really brings that song to reality for me, because everything that he's talking about in that song, and that's one of the songs that he doesn't get credit for. Like, people will talk about like all the love songs and all the other you know, commercial songs that he's made, but Illegal Search, that's a real song that a lot of us could identify with, particularly at that time. And I definitely had that experience. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, bro. And I mean, you glossed over that whole size thing, but that's huge in all of this, really, because the whole stereotype threat, you know, of a and even not only the stereotype threat of yes, it's Go ahead, Monet. You go on that.
No, I was only interjecting, but go ahead with your.
No, I want to hear from you, but I think you're on the same lines as where I'm going with this, you know, and I would love to even attack it from, because there's so much research out there that says specifically even Black girls, okay, who are perceived, especially yes, they're seen, they're over sexualized, okay, hypersexualization, and they're also viewed as older than their actual age, and they're usually called to discipline that way in school systems and so on and so forth. So that's like, I thought about that when you were telling that story, Mr. Gilbert, and I'm like, yo, man, that size definitely had a lot to do with it. But go ahead, Monet, I want to hear from you.
Okay, so first time I ever really recognized what my Black body, what the experience of my Black body does for other people. So that's really how I would maybe reframe the question for myself, because even growing up, just had a lot of interaction and a lot of knowing about who I was as a Black person in the world. Like, Afrocentric family, we're going to Odun Day. We're taking school pictures in garb. We're going to coming of age ceremonies. I mean, all of that. So I've always had a knowing. But as far as having any personal experiences, you know, you hear things secondhand, you may read about things, see things on TV, but as far as a firsthand experience, wasn't until I was, I'd say, and my only overt experience that I've actually ever had. I've had some other subtle experiences, but the overt experience I had, maybe I was 15 years old, and I was working in a pharmacy in West End, one of the girls that I went to school with, when I was in class with. So in the program that I was in, it's the same core group of kids from my third grade year all the way up until I graduated, right? So it may be about 15, 16 kids that are in this core group. And at any given time, there may be 3 Black kids in the class, right? 3 to 4, maybe, just my entire experience. And so I always felt comfortable because, you know, we're doing all of the sleepovers, everybody's parents loves you, you know what I mean? Just a very comfortable environment. And so that way I was very sheltered, right? And so I'm working at the pharmacy. One of the girls that I'm in school with, who's a part of this group, we grew up together. Her father owned the pharmacy. So I'm working at the front counter. This guy comes in, and he's looking for pictures, his photos. And so they used to keep the photos underneath the front cash register. So I was like, you know, hold on a second. Let me check and see if they're done. So I'm looking underneath the counter, and I get up and I'm like, you know, sir, they're not finished. I don't have them up here. And so he starts like going off because he's hot that these pictures are not ready for him. So he goes to the back, and by the time he gets back to the front, he's like livid, and he's now loud and people can hear him. So everybody's kind of keeping an eye on him because I was the only one up in the front. And So I don't even remember exactly the sequence of words, but by the end of it, he's calling me a nigger. Hard.
Wow. Wow.
Like, and I just stuck in my tracks. Like, I'm like, whoa. Before I could even respond, her dad, some other people in the store came and they were like, hey, not okay. And they made me leave. So it was taken care of immediately, but I had never experienced anything even remotely close to that. And like at first I was just shocked. And then I was crying, just shaken up because it's this grown man. I'm up there. What if he would have had something on him? Who knows? Whatever happened and got him to that place, I didn't have anything to do with it. And he didn't make any disparaging remarks to anybody else in that store. And not obviously, but I was the only Black person in the store. You know what I mean? And so he felt it necessary to call me out of my name when there's an entire store full of people. Nobody has these photos for you. It's not just me. And you can tell that I'm a kid. Yes, I'm tall like Mr. Gilbert. Yes, I'm tall like Gilbert, you know what I mean? But you can tell that I'm young. I don't look how old I am now, and I'm 90. You know what I'm saying? So at that time, you could tell that I was young. But for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, it's a very obvious reason for me, as he calls me a nigger, you know what I mean? It's because however I present myself in the world, something about that does something to him, and triggered him. And so long story short, so my friend's dad is like, I'm so sorry, just apologize. Just really nice people, really nice people. He's like, you can go home. If that was too much, definitely call your mom. You can go home. It's okay. We understand. But in my mind, I'm like, he wins. If I go home, if I let him do that to me, say that to me, and give that power and make him force me out of I was having a good day up until then. So, and that was my way of winning, but is to stay. I cried, but I wiped my tears. And I got back to work and I finished my day. So that was my experience.
Sis, that's deep. I mean, because even that last part that you said about like, it was almost like you as the victim in this situation,
right?
You had to also prove, which goes back to this body. It goes back to this perception that we can take, Black people can take more. It goes back to the whole, when you even get into studying slavery, you and understand that there was this perception that we were like these beasts that can control, that can encounter and embrace all of this physical violence on our bodies and continue on. So when you just said, I had to wipe my tears and I had to continue and I finished that shift, and I'm like, yo, is that okay? Because I
can answer it. No, it's not okay. It's not okay.
But I'm like, but it's like, that's that whole psychosocial, that's that whole psychological warfare that's going on, where part of us, especially when we don't have knowledge of ourselves, we own this. We start owning it. Like, this was my fault somehow. Sherod, what do you think, Sherod? What do you think?
I was getting ready to just say a little bit. That's the first time I've heard that story. So
I can tell by your reaction.
That story. Yeah.
She owned it. She just owned that.
That's the first time I heard that. So, it's in my head. I'm trying to figure out, like, did you remember what he looked like? Because I'll look at
True.
But, when part of her staying makes me wonder if, and I think a lot of us are guilty of this, of trying to, like, they're asking you if you're okay. Are you okay? Are you okay? And a lot of times we know we're not okay, but the conditioning makes us want to make sure that they're okay.
True.
Where we're the one that's been shot, but we're trying to dress their wounds because of what they witnessed, but we're the ones that actually got hit. So, that's making me think, at the age that you were when you were working there, it's like, to be that age, and have that instinct, because I'm sure it wasn't something that you really thought a whole lot about. It's like, no, I'm just gonna stay. I'm just gonna stay.
Mhm.
And like you said, I'm not gonna let him win. But that's the way that you would have processed it at the time. That is just something else. Yeah, that's the first time I heard that. So that's
I could tell Sherod having kind of a sister moment, a big sister moment. Like it's gonna be a conversation after this. Like
gotta have a post-show conversation.
yeah.
Number one.
I can hear a post-show conversation.
Yeah, my nerves.
My God.
Like, you ain't tell me that. I ain't hear that story. But
that's how we are. If she had come home and said that, my father would have burnt the entire city down until he found that man. Like that's just, and that's we'll get into that maybe at some other time when he starts talking about what his son experienced. But you done though?
Yeah. I'm done. I'm through.
So yeah. So I was trying to think about the first time that I realized who I was and how I showed up, and I really couldn't come up with any situations like you. I would really have to say, for me, it wasn't until I had my first son. Because before then, I've just always had rosy colored glasses, always just very light-hearted and just likable. So in my head, and still today, when I know it's not true, but today I still feel everybody likes me, everybody loves me. You know what I mean? When I know that there are some that don't, but in my head, the way I see the world, everybody loves me. So it wasn't until I had a son and I was forced to take those glasses off and just see how other people experienced him, because like Mr. Gilbert, he was a larger child, so he would be in school and preschool, and things would happen, and he'd come home and talk about things, and you go to the school and you ask what happened or who did it. They don't want to tell you, and now I'm looking at them and the way they're looking at me, and it's like they think that I'm going to come in here and I don't know, blow the whole school up when I really just want to know what happened to my kid.
True.
I just want to know what happened. I just want to know, why is it that I'm bringing him to preschool in the morning to drop him off? Why is one kid making everyone get up and move to another table and not play with him? Wow. I just want to know why. And I want to know why the teacher is allowing this to happen. And why did she take a box of toy dinosaurs and said, here, TJ, you can play with this. Not make the other kids share and play with you, but here, since you're over here by yourself, here's a box of dinosaurs to keep you busy until and this is the early care, and he's 3 because I'm pregnant with Michael at the time. So he's only 2 or 3 years old when this is happening. And, so that was the first time. It was through my child that I saw it, because before then I couldn't. And then after that, of course, it just snowballed. Every day somebody's after my black body, but it's like every day after that. But before then, I could not see it. And I probably would have heard, and this is just me being honest and transparent, I probably would have heard the story that Mr. Gilbert talked about in the beginning. And I might have said to myself, are you sure y'all weren't doing something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I may have, because that's just the way that I saw life, knowing, I think I just wanted to see it that way, because I could never accept believing that things like that were happening to a group of boys, just walking home from school. Yeah, like, so I know I would have been like, are you sure? I may not have said it, but in my head, I might have been thinking it, because I would never have wanted to believe it. And I would hear stories about things that happened that today I know are 100% true. But back then I probably would have been like, I don't know, y'all had to be doing something. Like, what exactly was going on? It had to be something, and it's not. I've experienced it, like doing nothing, and having the same types of experiences.
And it's wild because sometimes, what you just said, Sherod, is deep, because sometimes, like that situation that Mr. Gilbert explained, I was there, right? And when I went home, I said nothing of that situation. It's almost like Monet. Like, I didn't go home and tell my mom. I didn't tell my grandma, who I would have probably been going right home to then. I didn't say anything to her. A part of it is there's a sense of powerlessness. It's like, we have no power to change what just happened. Right. And then the other part is we begin to normalize it. And in the era that, Mr. Gilbert, to provide some context, that was the whole war against drugs era. So that's when, at that point, police officers had the ability, they were called the jump out boys. Like, we would just be, you could just be standing outside of your house or your apartment in the housing projects, and, vans unmarked can pull over, jump out, and you run. But then you don't know if this is someone from a rival town, or, that's coming, or if it's police. You have no clue. So you just run, and then you look guilty because you're running. And then the first thing that you get caught, they're like, well, why were you running?
Why are you running?
I was running for my life. I was running because I was afraid of what might happen to me. And that is what was happening in targeted communities. So that's a whole thing we got to understand and realize, as part of this, so when we got pulled over that day walking, it was almost a norm. And I know I went home, and I didn't say anything about it. I never spoke about that story again, so those, but those situations, I thought it was good to start there, man, because, and I like, Monet, what you said about, others and how they react and respond to my Black body, there was a piece where, where in the letter to Ta-Nehisi Coates' letter to his son in the book, he goes on to say, that was the week you learned that the killers of Michael Brown would go free. The men who had left his body in the street like some awesome declaration of their invaluable power would never be punished. It was not my expectation that anyone would ever be punished, but you were young and you still believed. You stayed up till 11 p.m. that night, waiting for the announcement of an indictment. And when instead it was announced that there was none, you said, I gotta go. And you went into your room, and I heard you crying. I came in 5 minutes after, and I didn't hug you. I didn't comfort you because I thought it would be wrong to comfort you. I did not tell you that it would be okay because I have never believed it would be okay. What I told you is what your grandparents tried to tell me, that this is your country, that this is your world, that this is your body, and you must find some way to live within all of it. I tell you now that the question of how one should live within a Black body, within a country lost in the dream, is the question of my life. In the pursuit of this question, I have found ultimately answers itself. So, when I read that, it's kind of like what we were just talking about, like these moments of like not even sharing, these moments of emotion but emotionlessness. And then I even thought about what's brothers, This Is America, because it kind of is resonating in there, like this is America, that was so deep. Yes, Childish Gambino. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, because I'm like, that song, This Is America, this is it. In having a child, having a Black son and a Black daughter, I'm like, I think about that and I'm like, do I console them? Do I say it's going to be better? you know, or do you keep it real? Like, what do you do? Like, I'm just curious to see what you all think about that. But like, I didn't hug him. Like, that was powerful, man. That was like,
Yeah.
it was deep.
Yeah, because you think that that's the first thing that you want to do, you know?
It's console, right? But then it's like, am I setting him up for failure by, you know, giving him this false sense of, you know, it's going to be all right.
But is the hug saying it's going to be all right? Or is it saying like, I know, I mean, we had it right in the middle of the pandemic, right around the George Floyd's death, you know, and I think I shared with you, it was a lot because it was the lockdown. And then I have, you know, male children here, you know, I have a Black husband, my father, you guys, you know, so we're thinking about all of that, you know, I'm thinking about all of that. And I just remember my son just going back and forth to work. You know, it was already, you know, 22. So he's already feeling a way about not being able to have this mother that he used to have. And it was just one day where it was just all too much, you know, and it was a lot. And I hugged them, but it wasn't like it's going to be okay. It was like, you know what? Like, I'm with you, and this is effed up, you know, like, and you know, that's what it wasn't a hug of consolation. It was more of like, you know, I see you, I hear you, and you know, like, yeah, like this is when we got nobody else, we got each other because this is a damn mess. You know,
I like that. Go ahead, Monet.
The hug from the mother, because that is your position in his life to be the nurturer. So that is to be expected of you.
Right.
And the father, his role is really more so to help the son with how he's going to walk through the world, how to digest what happens and how he should be conducting himself or not conducting himself. And I think in that case, the hug from the father, sometimes you just have to sit in it because I don't know that it's going to be okay. You know, I really don't. And as far as we can tell right now, it's not okay right now. And it's not going to be okay. And it's going to be quite some time before it is okay. And I think that's the value of having the husband, the man in the home, or I shouldn't just say in it because things happen, but in the young man's life so that he can be there to help guide him through things like that. Because there are things that man is going to be able to identify with and communicate to the son that, you know, we would never even have any clue to even address. It wouldn't even cross our mind to, you know, discuss certain things.
Wow. Yo, it made me think of Boys in the Hood.
Oh yes.
Yo, remember?
I know Boys in the Hood too. That's interesting.
Did it cross your mind?
Yeah.
Yes. Yo, that was
not in this conversation, but as I was going through it, I definitely
It just hit me because I was like, yo, when Trey, it was Trey, right? Trey, he came home. It was a shooting. Yeah, he left. Which one was it? Was it the time when
it was when they got pulled over?
Okay, yes.
And that was the black cop.
Yes. That's right. And he came home. Yes. Furious Styles. Shout out to Katrina Hellman, just put it up in there. Furious Styles. Yes, that was the father. And Cuba, it was Trey, you know, in the movie, but he just broke down.
Yeah.
You know, it was like this breakdown, you know, and then it was this embrace. And I remember watching that movie and I was like, yo, that's deep. Like, because you didn't see a lot of that, you know, in film. Like, because at the end of the day, you know, somebody had put in the chat that, you know, Black bodies being devalued. Because at the end of the day, it's almost like, you know, we can take it. We don't have these feelings that every other, you know, group of folks have, like human beings have. And when he broke down, it made me think of, you know, this, you know, it really did. I don't know, man. I had a crazy dream the other night, right? That my son was not standing up for himself. And it was driving me crazy to the point where I was putting my hands on my son to stand up for himself, because I was thinking of future situations that he would be in, that if he was not standing up for himself as a child, he would fail to stand up to him for himself as a young adult and then as adult. And I said, that will be your failure. So, and I woke up from that dream and it tripped me out, like it tripped me out, man. It tripped me out. I Mr. Gilbert, you're a girl dad, man. What, how does this speak to you, fam?
Well, I'm gonna kind of like address what everyone else has been sharing with the whole concept with him not hugging the son. And I agree wholeheartedly with Sherod and Monet in that it's different because of the gender. So from the mother's perspective, like it was shared, that's more of a nurturing comfort there. That's to be expected. True. But from a father's perspective, and I think back to when we were all waiting for the indictment with George Zimmerman, with Trayvon Martin back in 2012, and the disappointment that I felt, and I'm sure a lot of people felt when that verdict came in. Like how could this be? Like you start having so many questions about everything about this country, about the justice system, and how time and time again, and this just added to it, has failed us. And how, how do we fix it? How do we move on from here? So these are the things that as an adult, as a parent, we've experienced. And he even talks about this in the book, that he's had these experiences.
True.
And I think what he's trying to convey to his son is that he knows the long road ahead. Is like, this isn't changing anytime soon. So you are going to have to go through this hurt, this despair, this disappointment. And it's better that you go through it now than later on, or being shielded away from it now than later on it being like a surprise to you. It's better to deal with it and grapple with it now than wait, until you become an adult and have to try to make sense of it and rationalize it. But as a father to a daughter, it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same. Like, I remember this was shortly before the 4th of July. And I had a conversation with my daughter about why we shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July. And she, first she said, why? She asked the question, why not? And so, then I asked her a question. You're not supposed to answer the question or the question, but I did. I was like, well, do you know why you celebrate it? And then she replied, no. And so I began to, to break it down to her. So earlier that week, I gave her some money to go buy clothes or something like that. And she ended up buying dolls. So yeah, she ended up buying dolls. So, I said to her, well, she actually was thanking me for giving her the money to go buy, what I thought clothes to buy those dolls. So we got onto the conversation of Meltrack. I talked about Meltrack before at Animated Productions. They have these hip hop animated series of cartoons that are focusing on Black civilizations before America, Colombian America as well. So there are 2 installments so far. So I purchased those DVDs for her a second time. I got them, you know, initially like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, like when she was first born. So I purchased them again, and I asked her if she had seen the videos, and she was like, not yet. So, you know, I was telling her about the importance of of watching those videos. I was like, look, I know, you know, it's summertime, you know, this is probably the furthest thing from your mind, but at some point, watch those videos. So that's how we got on.
Hold on. How old is your daughter?
That's
Let
exactly how
everybody know how old you, because it sounds like you're having a conversation with a teenager, and I know you're not. So I want everybody
She
to
came
know.
out talking and reading, so you can talk to her like that.
Yo, how old is she?
She is 8 years old.
All right, thank you.
She's
I
8 years
want some
old.
context so people know.
Yeah, she's 8 years old. She's in 3rd grade. She definitely is at the age where I think in our relationship that I can have this conversation with her.
That's why I
So
said it. Yes.
I felt it was the time to have what people would deem a harsh discussion or a difficult discussion. So to kind of like not make this long, make this story so long. So we got into the discussion of why it's important for her to watch those videos. I said, because these videos will put, number one, it will put into context where you came from before all of this madness that we are enduring and that we've had to endure here in America for well over 400 years. So that's why I wanted her to see those videos, because it doesn't start in, you know, in slavery, in chattel slavery. It doesn't start in that. So, and that's something that we'll talk about later in terms of what, you know, Black parents can do in terms of addressing these issues and our plight here in this country, something that they can do at home that's practical and they can do right away. But we got onto the discussion of, I said, this is why we celebrate the 4th of July, because you have to understand that in 1776, Black people were in chains and shackles. And I said, that's what one side of this country celebrates. I said, another population, our population, and all original people do not celebrate this country for what society at large celebrates it. So in 1776, we were in chains. We were bought and sold like those dolls you bought earlier on.
Wow.
Jesus
And
Christ.
then I asked her a question.
Wow.
Mr.
Wow.
Gilbert.
He was hot about these dolls.
Wow.
So,
Leave the dolls alone.
so then I asked her again, I was like, is that something you want to celebrate? And she was like, no. I said, now don't get me wrong, you know, because I know, especially kids, and we've all enjoyed, you know, the 4th of July festivities with the fireworks. I said, don't get me wrong, I want you to enjoy that. But you need to understand the historical context and the history behind this, so that you're not blindsided, especially when you get in these classrooms, when you move up in grade levels and, you know, regurgitating the same curriculum and the same history over and over again. You'll be able to say, this isn't historically true. This is what I was taught. This is what I was learned. I mean, or what I learned. So I think it is important for us to have these conversations and these discussions with our children. And I felt, particularly at that time, because we were like a week, maybe a week and a half removed from the George Floyd murder, and everything was still raw, emotions were still raw. And I just felt it was time. I felt it was time to have that, you know, discussion and that dialogue with my daughter.
And you had it in a way, you know, it sounds from what you explained, that was age appropriate. You know, and it laid it out, because you got to remember, like, you know, historically in this country, we were originally seen and written into policy and law as being 3/5 of a person. So there, you know, when we talk about Black bodies, like, all right, in this country, let's go back there. You know, so if we start thinking that, this is a joke or this is not important, and you look at, the genesis in this country, you quickly find out. Quick poem, came to mind, Langston Hughes, right? Mother to Son. Some of you may be familiar with this, but it kind of makes me think about this whole thing. Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up in places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, eyes have been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you finds it's kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for eyes are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Like, if that's not the poem for this,
like,
if that's not the poem.
I love that poem, yeah.
It's like, it's, in parents out there, right? Educators out there, right? You want to get into these deep conversations with your kids, with young people, start with that poem. And, that's a simple entry into a deeper and larger conversation of struggling. Like, do I tell the truth? Do I explain the hardship, or do I keep it, buried and tucked away? That's deep. And some of us, even during this season, right? Some of us parents are guilty of this. We're going out buying all these things, all of these gifts and all of this stuff to try to make it, everything is good. Everything, no, tell the truth, mom. The government out here giving away $600 $600, yo, people being evicted, people
all this time.
$600. That is crazy.
All these months for $600.
$600. Like, it's real. It's real out here, for poor people. It's real out here for people in general. But when you start compounding that poverty, it's crazy. So I wanted to, before we wrap up tonight, right? Because I'm always trying to be conscious of everyone's time and the commitments to time. So before we wrap up tonight, I wanted to hit one more piece, right? So I'm gonna read to you, and this little piece stuck out to me crazy, because when Ta-Nehisi Coates starts getting into like growing up in the hood, and kind of, you knew when it was fighting weather, you knew when it was about to go down. You had like we all been there, right? And I'm like, yo, the way he explained that was so deep, right? So he was going into, like, I just want to read it. So I heard the fear in the first music I ever knew, the music that pumped from boom boxes full of grand boast and bluster. The boys who stood on Garrison and Liberty up on Park Heights loved this music because it told them, against all evidence and odds, that they were masters of their own lives, their own streets, and their own bodies. That's hip hop, right? Mm-hmm. I saw it in the girls, in their loud laughter, in their gilded bamboo earrings that announced their names thrice over. And I saw it in their brutal language and hard gaze, how they would cut you with their eyes and destroy you with their words for the sin of playing too much. Keep my name out your mouth, they would say. Look, the ladies laughing. I would watch them after school, how they squared off like boxers, Vaseline up, earrings off, Reeboks on, and leaped at each other. Yo, did he not like
after everything? That's your life.
Yo,
that's your life.
Yes.
That's when you thought it was only happening in your town. You thought it was only happening in your town.
If you listen, growing up, we knew,
like, we could name names right now. He's just
yes.
We can name names, like we know exactly who he just described.
It was true. Yo, like, you left those girls alone. Like, bro, you so crazy.
Yes. That is funny. But it's true, that fighting weather is hilarious. What'd you say?
Give Mr. Gilbert, what did you say?
Oh, was I breaking up? I said, shout out to those girls who are about that life.
Yes,
Oh my God. Yes, indeed.
It was like, it was crazy. But, you know, he goes on to say, to survive the neighborhoods and shield my body, I learned another language consisting of a basic complement of head nods and handshakes. I memorized a list of prohibited blocks. I learned the smell and feel of fighting weather. And I learned that, Shorty, can I see your bike? Was never a sincere question. And yo, you was messing with my cousin was neither an earnest accusation nor a misunderstanding of the facts. These were summoners that you answered with your left foot forward, your right foot back, your hands guarding your face, one slightly lower than the other, cocked like a hammer, or they were answered by breaking out, ducking through alleys, cutting through backyards, then bounding through the door past your kid brother into your bedroom, pulling the tool out of your lambskin or from under the mattress or out of your Adidas shoebox, then calling up your cousins who really aren't your cousins and returning to the same block on that same day and to that same crew hollering out, yeah, nigga, what's up now? I recall learning these laws clear than I recall learning my colors and shapes because these laws were essential to the security of my body. Like, it when we just think about the things we had to navigate, right?
Yeah.
Oh, just think about you talk about memorizing blocks.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
You don't walk. Yo,
where you don't cut through. Like
yes,
all the way around because you're not cutting through the jungle.
It's so crazy how you get programmed because I was never the kid that was out there fighting weather. But you know, I know what my experience is. I know what I've seen. You know, so I remember getting to college, and my best friend at the time, she was from New York, and like we would be out and talking to each other, like, "Yo, they're not gonna fight him for that." Even though that wasn't like my life, you know, you get programmed, and when you see things and you learn that language, you take that language wherever you go, even if you're not necessarily the one that's speaking it, right? And it's like, what's going on?
You're right. Yes.
You understand, but yeah,
and it protects you, right? It's like that's what you know. Because then if something went down, you know, like after that one situation happened, we walked through the trestle, right? If we walked through the trestle again, and Mr. Gilbert, if you went home and told your mom, I walked through the trestle again and this is what happened, what would your mom then say? Why were you walking through that trestle again?
Why'd you go back?
Because you like, bro, you were at that, you had that experience already. You should have learned that lesson already, you know? And I just think about that because there were ways that we would get home. And there were that to protect ourselves. There were ways that you would walk home to protect yourselves. There's blocks that you would miss to protect yourself. Because if you were on that block, you had to know that it may be a fight. It may be a harassment situation. So,
a test. Somebody might try to test you just to see, you know.
You might need to be in the house before the lights come on.
Yeah. Because you never know, and for girls, I think about myself in particular. So
not me.
I remember. About me, I'm thinking about me right now. Always you, but I remember walking home from school. It was always shorter to take a certain way home, and I remember my dad saying, "I don't care about it being shorter. You take the extra 5 minutes and you go this way when you're walking home. You know, don't let me find out that you come in this way. You walk this way home from school." And one time I don't walk that way. My dad is home early or took the day off. I don't know. I'll take it a shortcut. I'm coming down. I see him.
You
I'm like,
home.
shit. You know? And I'm like, because every day, like I'm doing it 2 or 3 days out the week. I'm not doing it all 5 days, but 2 or 3 days out the week. 2 or 3 days out the week, I might cut through and just, see if I can get him. And it's like I'm like, oh my God. And I see him and I just remember ducking, coming back, going all the way back around and walking the way that I was supposed to. Because I just didn't, I couldn't do it. But when I think about myself and just like Mr. Gilbert, I was always much taller and I looked body wise. I was, I just had another kind of shape coming through where a lot of my other friends, it took a little longer to develop certain features, but I know like everything kind of just hit me at one time. And so my thing was, I'd rather walk this way than to walk down this street, which is actually the street that I live on, but I gotta walk past 2 certain places directly across the street from each other where there are people sitting outside waiting to say things
on you
about my body every single day as I'm walking home. So I'm like, I'd rather take a chance, cut through the back of the center, come out down Central, and end up on Liberty than to walk straight down and have these comments. I'd take a chance on seeing if I maybe having somebody just saying something slick to me or whatever, knowing that. But I was taking my chances that way. But these are the things that you have to think about. And I'm like, y'all, I'm just trying to get home. I just want to go home.
But for different reasons, your body is posing a whole totally different experience. I like how Monet said that for other folks.
For other people.
Wow. But then and then here you are, you got to do all of the backflips, the pivots, the gymnastics, just to prevent hearing all of this nonsense. And don't let it be the spring or summertime. You know what I'm saying?
Like weather. As soon as we at 60 degrees, they out there on the milk crates, flipped up on their sides. They sitting out there. Y'all know exactly where I'm at. They've been there all day. And I got to come through this and somebody's grandfather about to say something real crazy. And I just got to and keep, you know what I mean? Because what am I going to say? Yeah. I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm 14,
All of that. So all of that. And then when our kids get to school, some teachers have the nerve to say they're not good critical thinkers.
Are you kidding?
You had to navigate all of these things just to arrive to a school building.
Yeah.
Forget about learning, forget about engaging, in whatever the topic is, which in most times, in most cases, is not preparing you for that practical experience that you're going to have at 3:00 walking home again and being, in your hood and being in your neighborhood. Like, these are real situations, man. And they shape us. Someone put in the chat, psychologically, socially, psychosocial, however you want to say it. These experiences, they shape us. They shape us and they become a part of us. And then you start wondering, what is that taking away from me?
Right.
That's how I start looking at it. Like, is that going to make me not be as assertive in the workplace? Is that going to make me not have the same level of confidence? And we always want to say what doesn't, kill us makes us stronger, but there's a toll that all of this,
sometimes you just mess you up real bad. You may not die, but you'll be messed up.
You're right.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's the trauma that we're talking about here. That's the psychological trauma. Shout out to Dr. DeGrew, who has a book on that, post-traumatic slave syndrome, that hasn't been addressed. Like that's the lingering effects of chattel slavery in our experience here in America, is the psychological trauma that we are dealing with. And I think now there's more focus and attention on, particularly in our community, in in Black communities, that this is something that's a
Mhm.
top priority.
Yeah,
Because it contributes mental health, absolutely, because it contributes to the things that we are doing, the way that we think. It contributes to our life expectancy. So many things that have not been addressed regarding, the repair, reparations, as
Got it.
Y'all make that word down, yeah.
Name
That-
609.
Brother Coates talks about as well.
Everybody, is it that time?
Listen, so
It's your whistle time.
yes. So here's how I want to, because we have two more installments, right? Because we want to get to Howard. But before we end tonight, I think that is important because one of the things that, we talked about the pressures and the hassles, and there's a lot of research out there. It's called on urban hassles. And that's a lot of what we described tonight. These are urban hassles. These are things that we experience coming up that are real to us, and if you haven't grown up in an urban setting, these things may not be a reality to you. So he talks about those urban hassles. He talks about, the interactions between law enforcement and in this case, Black youth. And then the final thing before we sign off for the night, I think is important that because the third piece was schools, and he says, if the streets were not he says, I'm sorry, the streets were not my only problem. If the streets shackled my right leg, the school shackled my left. Fail to comprehend the streets and you gave up your body now. That could be death. Fail to comprehend the schools and you gave up your body later. I suffered at the hands of both, but I resent the schools more. There was nothing sanctified about the laws of the streets. The laws were amoral and practical. You rode with a posse to the party as sure as you wore boots in the snow or raised an umbrella in the rain. These were rules aimed at something obvious, the great danger that haunted every visit to Shake and Bake, every bus ride downtown. But the laws of school were aimed at something distant and vague. What did it mean to, as our elders said, grow up and be somebody? And what precisely did this have to do with an education rendered as rote discipline? To be educated in my Baltimore mostly meant, to be educated in Baltimore mostly meant packing an extra number 2 pencil and working quietly. Educated children walked in single file on the right side of the hallway, raised their hand to use the lavatory, and carried the lavatory pass when en route. Educated children never offered excuses, certainly not childhood itself. The world had no time for the childhoods of Black boys and girls. How could the schools? Algebra, biology, and English were not subjects so much as opportunities to be better disciplined, to better discipline the body, to practice writing between the lines, copying the directions legibly, memorizing theorems extracted from the world that they were created to represent. All of it felt distant to me. I remember sitting in my 7th grade French class and not having any idea why I was there. I did not know any French people, and nothing around me suggested I ever would. France was a rock rotating in another galaxy around another sun in another sky that I would never cross. Why precisely was I sitting in this classroom? I felt that we had to hit that because when you talk about all of the walls kind of coming in on a kid growing up, like you even go to school and it's like, there's no one at the school that's vibing with me from a professional standpoint. The curriculum ain't vibing with me. Like I'm paying the ultimate price. If we could, just spend a couple of minutes just talking about that school piece, and how that can be oppressive for some of our children.
So basically what he's talking about is the school to prison pipeline. That's what he's talking about. How it's all connected, because the rejection that you are basically receiving from school, and Sherod, you talked about, you touched upon this, as early as your son was in pre-K,
Preschool.
he was dealing with a racist system. That was race. That's an example of racism, what he experienced. He's alone by himself, and this teacher, whoever the teacher is, she allowed her class to exercise racist practices.
Oh, I was there.
Whether she intended, quote unquote, because he talks about intentions.
Good intentions, yes.
He's tired of, well, a teacher may have been well intended. He's tired of that, because that's kind of an excuse now. Is that, well, my intentions were great. I had good intentions, or I really didn't know. You're in the field of education. You have to be constantly thinking and analyzing. It's funny because this is what we instill in students. We instill critical thinking and analytical skills. So how are you going to teach something that you don't practice yourself, that you constantly practice yourself? So that's what he's describing. So it's like, all right, they're being isolated and shifted to the streets, pushed away to the streets where they know that these dangers exist. So that time that should be spent in a school setting is not, and it increases the likelihood for you engaging in some criminal activity, which then leads you to the prison system. I mean, it's deep, but that's essentially what he's describing here.
Yes. And that death later, getting that, it's like in the streets, you're going to die now. You know, it's an immediate, but then in school,
slow down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's not even just it's pervasive, essentially. I remember in middle school, I was having problems with teachers in a program where you wouldn't think that you would have an issue with teachers. Thank God I had parents that didn't mind coming to school. Every year I had them at that school because I think there's like a power struggle, power thing that, some of the teachers have, where I've always been taught you can say whatever you want to say.
Yep.
Make sure that you say it right.
Say it the right way.
Say it the right way. You respect your elders, but if you have something to say and you can communicate it, you can articulate it, then you have free reign. Go ahead and do it. And that is not okay for certain teachers, because they're in a place, if you challenge or contest anything that they say, there's blowback from it. And thankfully, my parents I'd call and they'd just ask questions later, but they were throwing and at that school, but not everybody has that. And I think that a lot of teachers know that. People that are in positions of power, they know that. And so I definitely can agree to the slow death of it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, is the reason when you say inclusivity and diversity matters in workplaces and in education, when we say diversity, we're talking about many things, but if you don't have folks in your organization that come from these different backgrounds and have these different experiences, whether they be cultural or racially, or socioeconomically, that means that you are missing entire perspectives in your professional workforce. And one of the things I always said when I was a teacher was like, I'm more than just an English teacher. Like, I want to be able to have conversations with students and be real with students, and that's one of the dearest things that students could ever say. My former students is that, you always kept it real, because basically what they are saying is what we just talked about. It wasn't just this abstract subject that we're studying that is not connected anyway to our lives. So, I think that that's a good space to end, because it kind of wraps, these conditions in terms of, what a lot of, us are experiencing in these inner city schools, in these inner city communities, growing up in poverty. It's a lot of what we are experiencing. And that's before we even leave and go abroad. That's just, that's just in, this setting that we call quote unquote home. That's it. But and here's what I'm gonna say before we bounce, because I think it's important to say
you're
this.
trying to rush yourself. I don't know about them, but I'm really not in a hurry. So you can...
All right, listen, because I'm always trying to be conscious of folks' time, Sherod. But because there's love, there's love in these communities. Like, I don't want it to be seen and to be understood that we are sitting here saying there's not love in these communities, because there is love in these communities, but there is also struggle in these communities. And it's not a lot of time to walk around and not be conscious of, all of the surroundings, because if you are unconscious, it can be your life in a lot of situations, So yeah, listen, I try to be conscious of everyone's time, Sherod. So
I know.
I gotta, we could go on for hours. Sometimes we sit on Zooms and we just go, you know what I'm saying? But I want to be conscious of everyone's time and everyone who's tuning in. Right. What's that?
We'll be back.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that we're coming back because we're gonna be headed down to the Mecca, to Chocolate City. We're gonna be checking in on Howard, because in the next part of the book, Ta-Nehisi speaks about his experience at Howard University, and then how those things happen. Go ahead, Monet.
I'm also, just to give you the heads, I'm also going to liken that experience to North Carolina and because
like enough of that.
Enough of that Chocolate City.
That was coming. So,
well,
no.
Yo, word up. Listen, bring it, sis. Bring all that. Is it the Aggies? What's
yes.
AT? Aggie? Yeah. Bring all that Aggie love, all that Aggie pride. Bring it. Because real talk, and I've been on many historically Black college universities, campuses, and when Ta-Nehisi explained Howard, I can close my eyes. I can think about Grambling. I can think about Norfolk State. So I'm with you there. I've never been at A&T, but I can definitely.
We can make that happen.
True. So I'm definitely with you there. And shout out to my nephew. He's going through screening and pre-acceptance for Howard. So he's working. He wants to go. Yeah, he want to go down. So yeah, shout out to Samir. With that said, I want to close out tonight by first thanking you all, brothers and sisters. I really appreciate your time, your commitment to having this discussion. Because this is stuff that we need to talk about. There's a lot of things we talk about, but we need to talk about this and talk more about it. And those of you who tuned in, thank you for tuning in. The chat was crazy. A lot of love in the chat, a lot of comments in the chat. We're going to be coming back to you. It'll definitely be after the first, in the new year. We'll come back with our second installment, and we'll do 2 and 3 when we wrap up, between the world and me. In the meantime, please go out, get the book, watch, even if you just watch the documentary, some of these actors and actresses reading it, it's crazy. It's like crazy. Go out, watch that. If you can't get the book, get your hands on the book, at least watch the documentary. So with that said, any last words? I'd like to go around and see if any of you will have any last words. Leave us with some parting words. We ain't gonna start with Sherod. We started with Sherod last time. This is the teacher in me. So I'm going to as Miss Madrigal used to say, when no one volunteered, she would say victimo, and that was the victim. I learned it, she's our Spanish teacher. And when no one raised their hand, she was like, okay, victimo.
So, start with Carlos.
Whenever she said that, my head just went down. I was like, don't pick on me. I cannot pronounce it. So with that said, let's start with you, Brother Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert, man, any closing remarks, brother?
This has been fun, man. That's all I really have to say. Oh, one thing, the intro. What's the brother's name? Mr. Encore?
Yes, Mr. Encore. Yes.
I love it.
Shout out to him. The intro was fire.
Yeah.
And so, you know, whenever hip hop is exposed, wherever I'm exposed to hip hop, I say, you know, my listening ears, my antennas go up.
Yeah.
So he used the piano from Ill Street Blues by Cool J
Listen
Rap.
to you.
No, because, all right, yo, Jeff.
I did.
I had to confirm it. I was like, yo,
He's an
is
encyclopedia.
that the piano from Ill Street Blues? And he was like, yep. So I was like, that's fire. That intro is fire, but the fact that he used that piano.
Yo, shout out to Mr. Encore. I'm gonna have to hit him and be like, because when I heard it, he sent it, and Mr. Encore was like, he inspired me to do this show, right? He did this 360-day beat challenge, right? 365. He was like, yo, I'm gonna do a beat every day, right, of the year. So I was like, yo, that's dope. So I reached out to him before the pandemic. This was like in January, you know, a year ago. And I was like, bro, you inspired me. I want you to be the first guest on the show. And he came, he was the first guest August 2nd. And like 2 weeks later, he's like, bro, I want to do your intro. So he said, I've been working on this. So he sent that. He said, let me know what you think. Yo, and I'm like, bang him. I'm like, yo. And I turned to Tiff. I said, yo, I want a whole album now. Like, I want a track. Like now, you know, like I was like, I want a whole song, you know, like that was so fire, yo. That was so fire. So fire. Talented brother. Very, very talented. Definitely shout out to him. Sherod, closing remarks.
Just the same. I had a great time. You know, just good to just get some things out to kind of just maybe be able to have some topics that are relatable to other people. A lot of times we think that maybe we're the only ones going through things. So it's good to just know that we all have common experiences. And it was good. I'm just so excited to be on a panel with my sister. I didn't know how this would ever take place because we live two totally different lives. I'm like, well, how would I ever end up on a date with that girl? But yeah, I'm really excited.
We're making it happen.
We're bringing people together, connecting lives.
I'm bringing them together the coast, you know what I'm saying? I got a sister out in San Diego too. So shout out, you know, to Tracy.
We got to get that connection happening.
Yes.
Because, you know, the folks ain't out here. So I need to.
Yeah, no, definitely. I reached out to her. So yeah, I got a brother out there, sister out there, and a brother-in-law, you know, doing big things. Nieces and nephews that I'm definitely gonna connect you with. So y'all have something, you know, a connection. Definitely on that.
Boss.
Yes, definitely. So Monet, any closing remarks?
Closing remarks. I would just like to say thank you for providing the platform to go through this and to really digest it and have a dialogue about this. I've been wanting to do this type of discussion and haven't made a move to do it. And so I just appreciate you that this has put a fire under my butt to get out there and to be prepared for the conversation. So I appreciate you.
Yo, no doubt. We got to learn. We got to keep building knowledge. That's what this is all about, building knowledge. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Shout out to the community. Came out strong. I'm going to announce, go into the lab and we'll cook up some dates, and I'll get with the brothers and sisters and make sure we have a date that works for everyone. And then we will get the date out to the community, and we'll come back for installment number 2 and then installment number 3. In the meantime, yo, take care of yourselves. Take care of yourself. There's one thing I want to leave you with. I heard this. I forget who said it. I heard it somewhere. It was a podcast or something. And they were like, when you enter a room, refuse to slouch. And I was like, yo, I like that. I think I'm gonna start ending the show. You know, like when you enter a room, refuse to slouch. Yo, stand up tall, keep those shoulders high, that chin up, eyes up. Yo, don't slouch. I love that, bro. So Salute to the brothers and sisters who joined tonight, made the show possible.
Our family is in here strong. My cousins and our aunts.
Yeah, I'm seeing it all. Like, it's a lot of love in here tonight.
That's right.
We roll deep.
Yeah, a lot of
we follow each other around.
a lot of love in the chat tonight. So those of you who celebrate holidays during this season, please celebrate safely, be healthy, and enjoy the time with your family. And definitely Happy New Year to everyone, because we won't be coming back until after the new year. So salute to you all. Be safe and, celebrate wisely. So with that said, we're going to go out. Mr. Gilbert pulled the Hill Street Blues, man. Wow. That's crazy. My grandmother used to watch that. I'm mad I ain't even picked that up, man.
Right? The TV show?
Was it Ill Street? Was it the Coogee Rap?
Yeah.
Oh, the Coogee Rap. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's what it was. Okay. That's what it was. Yes. All right. They don't want us to get off tonight. Thank you to Sankofa. Yo, we got to reach back and bring forward. That's what Sankofa is all about, man. That's what we do on the show. Word up. So we're going to go out to the Hill Street Blues. I was like, yo, Hill Street Blues? I was Hill Street Blues. Okay. Coogee Rap. Mr. Encore, salute.
It's an encore banger. Dr. Rawls dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp. Learn all the tactics. Dr. Rawls dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game. He got it mastered. Sign